Peace. What's good? How y'all doing? Today is Monday, March 20th, 2023. I pray that this message reaches you all in the best of health, spirit, and mind. This is going to be a very quick, brief presentation slash sneak peek slash update on Ancient People, a Social Studies and History textbook, Volume 1 by ZaZa Ali. I'm going to preview with you guys the chapter called Africans in Asia. I'm super excited about this book, about this whole project, and it has taken me way longer and a lot more elbow grease and time and energy than I ever could have imagined. This book is way outside of the scope of all of the other books that I've created so far, and rightfully so. I am about 2 weeks away from going to print. I'm in the final editing stages of the book. I'm in the making sure that proper credit and attribution for all images and all information that is shared in the book. Let me pause this because I'm already off schedule in terms of my time, but making sure proper credit and attribution is given in terms of images and in terms of scholars and historians and context. Also, I'm waiting for the final graphics from my artist that I told you guys about before, as well as some of the images that need to be digitized in order that they print properly. And that's a whole other element within itself. We have over 200 images in this book from all over the world. Some of them are more recent and modern, but a lot of them are very low pixels in terms of how they present when they're printed. So that in itself is a process. And like I said, there's more than 200 images in this book. So it is a situation. But let's get back to this short video presentation. Well, let me just start over, okay? I'm not going to start my talk over, but I'm going to start the video over just to make sure that you guys can follow the narrative as I'm talking about this, or I can follow my own narrative. This book right now is for sale, pre-orders for $50 for the paperback version. This is the final cover for the paperback version, a rough draft of it. And I'm going to show you the final cover for the hardcover as well. So right now you can reserve your copy for $50 for the paperback and $75 for the hardcover. Once we go to print, which means final proofing process is done. Once we go to print, this book is going to sell for $70 for the paperback, between $70 and $75 for the paperback, and between $95 and $100 for the hardcover. That's going to happen as soon as we go to print. So if you're interested in purchasing a copy, I would highly suggest that you purchase it now, especially for those of you guys who have been following my work and my content for some time. I definitely value and appreciate your support. And thank you so much to those of you who have purchased the book so far. So let's get into Africans in Asia. And again, let me just say, it was originally 230 pages. It's going to end up being 300 pages. Africans in Asia, pause for just a second. I am not necessarily convinced of the quote unquote out of Africa theory in terms of, a lot of these ancient and indigenous cultures. If you know the original world map or the original landmass of what we now know to be all of these different continents were at one time conjoined. And if you really study a map, you can verify that. They call that original landmass Pangea. Somebody is outside burning rubber. Great timing. They call that original landmass Pangea. So I titled this chapter Africans in Asia in honor of the book written by Runoko Rashidi. I'm just giving them a second to get it out their system. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but somebody just burning rubber outside my house. In honor of Runoko Rashidi, his book, African Star Over Asia, The Black Presence in the East. And so I wanted to honor this body of work and all of this information that he put into this book. It is the most conclusive and thorough, body of work that anyone has done in the world to date on this subject. So I wanted to honor his intention. And I'm not saying that the out of Africa theory is not accurate. I actually, for me to even title this chapter of the book, there had to be premise, which I'm going to show you in this chapter, or I will show you when you read the book. You'll see the San people, as well as multiple other, African indigenous cultures, absolutely share very specific phenotypes and facial features with what we know of today as the Chinese and Japanese races. But again, I am not just, the common consensus is the out of Africa theory, and the West and Europeans absolutely promote that theory, which naturally is going to make it suspect to me. But let me get back to the subject. So we start out with the timeline of this group of quote unquote mercenaries, or should I call them professional hitmen? I think that would be too cheap. We think of, what we think of mercenaries today would be professional hitmen, but these men in these cultures were operating from different, standards of integrity and morality. So I don't even think I would call it that, but they were for sure mercenaries. And these Sakanuye no Tamuramaro, who is one of the characters or the historical figures that I highlight in this chapter, he came from a lineage of professional mercenary. Not only were they warriors, but they were also administrators in the court. And it's funny because ancient Japanese culture, the timeline, they celebrate and they highlight Sakanuye no Tamuramaro extensively in terms of how they talk about him, but they've also whitewashed his story, and they go out of their way to not give him proper credit, which to me tells me a lot, right? So there is an ancient Japanese proverb that says, for a samurai to be brave, he must have a bit of black blood. Well, if you understand the story of Sakanuye and his father and his grandfather, who were titled the Men of the East, these great warriors, but they were also highly respected in terms of morality and integrity and how they carried themselves, which is later what the concept of the samurai hundreds of years later evolved into becoming. Then in my opinion, Sakanuye was absolutely 1000% the first quote unquote samurai. And he also was the first to gain the title of shogun. So this is the timeline of Sakanuye's family, his lineage, as well as when he was born, and all of the things that were happening in that area at that time that caused for them to need mercenaries in the first place. You can see I don't take any shorts when it comes to the design and the graphic. I made each chapter very specifically and intentionally focused on those cultures, right? So this is an image, a drawing of Sakanuye, one of the rare images that we have available of him. It's actually a painting and a rendition. All of the vocabulary words that you see underlined are part of the spelling and vocabulary sections of the book. Excuse me. This is another image, painting of him, Sakanuye, in battle. And there, I only found three, these two in specifically, but one more, but there are a lot of images that are attributed to him, like a Fudomayo, which I'm going to show shortly, that are actually not him. And I think it is an extreme tragedy that Japanese culture has not highlighted and emphasizes and screamed at the rooftops so that everybody in the world would know this man's name and his legacy. But it's okay. That's what the book is for. This is an image of the Ainu, or Ainu's people, as well as an indigenous or native Japanese man. As you can see, they're all very dark skinned. This is a temple that was built. This isn't Sakanuye's temple, but this is a temple that was built in Nara, the city of Nara, around that same time that these, great legacies were happening. Legends were being made of in this environment. And then this is another painting here of Sakanuye. He's always on his horse, he's always in battle, and he's always, being shown and reflected as a very powerful warrior. This is the armor of the samurai. We get into all the specifics of what all of the different aspects of their clothing and attire actually represented. then, as well as how it evolved over time and what it is now, excuse me. And you can see this brother here. This is one of the indigenous, or this is what the indigenous or native Ainu people actually look like. And they called Sakanuye the subduer of barbarians because they referred to the Ainu people, these people here, as barbarians. And they also, in Japanese, ancient Japanese, literature, as well as Chinese, as well as a lot of, European-based historical reviews, they refer to a lot of great warriors, great mind thinkers, and they were either peasants or slaves or servants. And so I've taken extra time, and been very diligent in going and finding the real true stories, because the minute that I hear a European other than, I should say, scholar or historian refer to these people as primitive or peasants or slaves, now I have to take extra time, to get more truth, because how do you go from a peasant to one of the greatest warriors or leaders or thought leaders in the world? A lot of it just doesn't make sense. So this image is normally attributed to Yasuke, and I believe this is just a native or indigenous Japanese young man from that time period. This is Sakanuye's temple. Kaio Mizu Dera was founded in 780 by General Sakanuye no Tamurumaro, subduer of barbarian tribes. It is named Pure Water Temple, a sacred waterfall located because of or after a sacred waterfall located on the hillside. The temple was burned several times by rival monks from Haizan, excuse me. The present buildings date from the early Edo period. This photo shows the Hondo, or the main hall, which was reconstructed in 1629, with the south veranda rising dramatically on 49-foot pillars. Imagine that. And look at the backdrop, how beautiful that is. Against the mountainside side of eastern Kyoto. The veranda consists of a large stage where religious dances were held while flanking stages on each side for the orchestra. The original Hondo, before the Tokugawa reconstruction, had been the throne room, or Shishinden, of Emperor Kamu when the capital was in Nagaoka. When Kamo moved the capital to Kyoto in 794, he disassembled the Shishinden and sent it as a gift to Generalissimo Tamurumaro, who in turn donated it to the temple, where it was reassembled on the present site. The building's palace origin accounts for its cypress or bark roof rather than the more usual tiled roof. So imagine a great, leader having so much respect for this man that he disassembles one of his properties, one of his main temples, and has his people take it to Sakanuye, who reassembled it and rebuilt it, et cetera, et cetera. So, and one of the things, when I finished the original manuscript, I told you guys I was at 230 pages, but as I started to go back through the editing process, I realized I'm not gonna have a chance to retell these stories. I mean, I can provide content and information at any times, but in terms of my book and my life's work and the legacy of what I'm creating here, I want to make sure that I'm telling these, the fullness of these stories. So this wasn't in the original manuscript, but when I went back and really looked at Sakanuye's life, I wanted to make sure that I gave it the full breadth of life and energy and respect that he deserved, because no one else has. When I say no one else, let me take that back. This is a world-class book. I have really, really, really been emphatic about making sure that I, not just with, making sure the information and the context is right, but actually bringing the visual representation of these people to life. And Sakanuye, and just, the whole martial arts warrior class, context of history is very near and dear to my heart. And so I just wanted to make sure that I gave this story credence visually, informationally, and make sure that I, really give him the proper respect in terms of the historical timeline, in terms of him being a Black, Native, melanated, African, indigenous, whatever proper term suits his legacy. I wanted to make sure that I honored that the right way. This is Fudomayo, and this is one of the images. These images are usually attributed to Sakanuye, but this is not Sakanuye. This is Fudomayo. Fudomayo, he was one of the patron of the samurai, one of 5 wisdom kings in Japanese mythology. And we can see here at the bottom, this is a up-to-date modern map of Japan. And then this is a ZaZa Ali special rendition map, going back to those ancient times and kind of highlighting some of the areas of Japan where, Sakanuye's father, they were from this upper right area of Japan. And his temple is right outside of Kyoto. So that's why we have the samurai there. But just making sure that we have, proper context in terms of what those areas look like then and what they look like now. The Ainu and Jomon of Japan. These are the ancient indigenous people of those areas. So I wanted to make sure we told those stories in proper context. You can see the buildings, which are very similar to the San people, the San tribe of Africa, as you see these images here. These are the Andaman or Nicobar Islanders. These are some of the images. British Royal Museum actually owns these images. So I have to get permission to purchase licenses and then be able to use them. That's a sidebar. But the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are here located on this map. You might not be able to see it well from this video. But look at these, blue-black or black-black Asian looking, ancient people. So I went back 35,000, 50,000 years. And then the African samurai Yasuke, I think it is a crime that all Black boys around the world don't know about this history, this legacy. They try to say he was a slave too. Nah, I don't think so. So you see, I spared no expenses in terms of the graphics, in terms of the color schemes, in terms of, bringing all of these materials and artifacts to life. Battle scenes. I'm nice with the graphics. Wait till you see the rest of the book. Oh, wait. Yes. Now we're getting into ancient China. These original Black people, beautiful Black people. The I Ching was created by Fuxi and Nuwa, or mythological figures, if you will. Some say mythological figures. Others say that they actually lived, and that Fuxi actually created the I Ching, which is a divination system that is known all over the world now. You'll notice in these images that they're holding measuring tools, which are said to be the tools to measure the universe, right? So, and they reference the 8 trigrams, which is going to be referenced later in terms of the Boxer Rebellion, which is really interesting because these are literally, these historic timelines are tens of thousands of years apart, right? I mean, but just think about this, the idea of creating an ideology and a measuring system, literally or figuratively, to measure the universe. And they look very Black, by the way. These images are not, You don't have to glance, you don't have to squint to see who and what these people actually were. Yes, the graphics, the images, just, I love history. I always have. I was born to do this. The Shang and the Tang dynasty, tens of thousands of years ago, okay? Actually, no, let me walk that back. The Shang and the Tang dynasty were not tens of thousands of years ago. The Ainu and the Jamin were, but the Shang and the Tang dynasty date back, 2,000-3,000 years, depending on which timeline you believe. Let's see, it's 2022. So yeah, 3,000, 4,000 years. All underlined words are part of the vocabulary spelling sections. So now we're getting into the Boxers' Rebellion. As you can see, these are obviously very dark-skinned warriors. You never see, these are the people they call peasants. These images right here, very dark-skinned, very obviously Chinese phenotypes, but very, very dark-skinned people. These people aren't mixed race people. These are the original indigenous people from, they say Chinese, the original people were from China, who came from the Andaman or the Nicobar Islands, or Africa, the San tribes and different tribes, depending on which narrative. But they landed in Japan first and then originally migrated. The Jomon are the ones who migrated to Japan and became, quote unquote, Japanese, as well as all of those different Asian and Oriental, tribes, cultures, etc. This is another image that I have to get licensed, but when you can see it clearly, this is literally hundreds of very, very dark-skinned Chinese people who were titled refugees back in the 1900s when the China's Boxer Rebellion was taking place. And basically the young men in that area got tired of Christianity being imposed on them, number one. And then number two, foreigners coming in and taking over their lands. So they started training and created a rebellion. Called themselves the Righteous and Harmonious Fists. They called them peasants. That's what they called themselves. The Yihituan, or Boxers, arose out of a Chinese secret society that was itself an offshoot of the 8 trigrams society. This is my kind of stuff. I'm a nerd for, martial arts, the spiritual sciences, coupling those two things just doesn't get any better for me. So the 8 trigrams is a spiritually based concept. And then you add the martial arts. We're talking about the science of breath, the science of the body, the correlation of the two, mind, heart, cohesion, etc. The society's name translated to the Righteous and Harmonious Fists. And they engaged in martial arts training with the belief that it would make them invulnerable. The name Boxers was given to the group by English-speaking missionaries who utilized the only comparatively equivalent word that they had for martial artists. Now, somebody will look at this and say, oh, they thought they were invulnerable, but a lot of them ended up being killed and murdered, which they were. And there's very graphic imagery to prove it. They were taking heads, decapitating these people, and then taking pictures so that the world would never forget. But how many of us even have a goal or an intention to be invulnerable in anything? This image right here is one of the images that I'm trying to get really cleaned up. I did a color remix on it because I'm trying to make the images pop out more, but I'm also having this redigitized to see if I can have that original image, shine on its own. It's original black and white. But imagine Bruce Lee, I was about to say Bruce Lee and Jet Li with charcoal black skin, or very, very deep, dark brown skin. Black skin, Bruce Lee. Black skin, think Idris Elba's skin tone on Bruce Lee or Jet Li. That's what these men in this image are. Very, very dark skin, very obviously Chinese phenotypes. Bodhidharma, the founder of the Shaolin legacy. He's from India. He wasn't from Africa, but still, they credit that to the Chinese. He was a black man. Some brothers riding on horse with Genghis Khan. The ancient Zia and Shang were blacks. This is the final cover for the hardcover version. So they're, the same, but also different, as well as in synopsis of some of the things that are covered in the book. So this is Ancient People, Volume 1 textbook, Social Studies and History textbook by ZaZa Ali. This particular chapter has an additional 15 pages that includes section reviews, a chapter review, coloring pages, vocabulary and spelling, a crossword puzzle, and I said coloring pages, didn't I? Yes, I did. There's also a teacher companion version of this book that will be released not too long after this one goes to print and we start shipping out those first orders. I wanted to put, a question and answer sort of section in the back of this book, but it would just be too big. And I'm trying to, limit it. I can't go past 300 pages at this point. So if I were to include that would take it way over the number of pages. So the parent teacher companion will have that as well as a bunch of other resources. So ZaZaAli.com is my website. info@ZaZaAli.com is my email address if you have any questions or want to get information about, placing orders for schools. My intention is to get this book into universities and colleges and high schools and middle schools. And yes, it is, simple enough for a well-read, I won't even say well-read. You don't even have to be well-read. If you have the intrigue and the interest in history and you have reading skills, but the goal is not just to give you the historical perspectives. The goal is to improve reading comprehension, to improve spelling, to improve our ability to, be able to say difficult names of different cultures, language and things that we may not necessarily talk about or discuss, or words that we may not even try to, pronounce. So all of those things are infused in this book, not just the history, but the language arts, the spelling, the vocabulary, the challenging yourself. I'm a tough cookie when it comes to, information and studying, and I am. And so that's in this book as well. But I also have taken due diligence to simplify the things that can be simplified while staying true to, these original expressions and translations of these historical, timelines. So thank you for all of you guys that have been patient with me, that have reserved your copy so far. This is absolutely the largest project that I've taken on. And I didn't even realize how big it was until I tried to get to the finish line. I'm getting to the finish line now, but the finish line is, it is what it is. But I'm writing, creating, and giving to the world a world-class, body of work. So I have to do it right. All right. So they're burning rubber in the background. And again, I don't know what the hell that's about. Maybe they're celebrating, letting you guys know they're in support of me in this book. But I'm going to end with that. Thank you again. And like I said, if you have any questions, email me, info@zazaali.com. And I'll see you soon. Peace and love.